I'll talk a little bit about U.S. China, but before that, I want to talk about the Schwarzman Scholars Program, because I know you've had quite a bit of news lately, more than, 2,700 applicants that you've had for your current class of 2018. Are you happy in the last 3 years with how this program has developed?
Well, the program actually has 4,000 applicants for what will be this year, 142 students. So it's one of the most selective by far programs in the world. We have amazing students, graduate school level, getting a master's degree at Tsinghua University in Beijing, and it's really turned into even more
than what you thought it would be?
Than I can imagine, and I've got a really good imagination.
I was going to say, you do things very big, right? I mean, you've got big goals when you do something.
Well, we try.
The students themselves, I know they come from something like 29 countries plus. What are some of the major issues that they want to tackle, especially given what's going on right now in the global environment?
Right. Well, we asked them to come because they're future leaders, not because we make them future leaders. They already are. They have a global perspective, and they have areas of expertise, whether it's in the business economics area, public policy, foreign relations. And what they're trying to do is have a good life and learn about China because of China's enormous importance to the world. Largest country in terms of population, second largest economy. And we give them a chance to have mentors from the real world in their areas of interest. We take them on trips around China. They work for a little bit studying an issue in either an NGO or a company or a ministry, and plus they get to live and work with each other.
Have you seen particular themes, though, that are different, let's say, now than they were when you started the program, issues that they want to tackle and focus on?
Well, the program's going to be 3 years old, and it runs from the environment. We have a number of people from around the world who want to be presidents of their countries, and this is part of learning. And we have people who want to be famous business people, and everybody wants to make their mark as an individual, but leave something important for society. And we started this to try and make the world safer, because what one finds is when you have a challenger country like China and an incumbent power like the U.S., 3/4 of the time in the last 500 years, you had that kind of scenario. You had wars between those two countries. And what could be worse? And so part of the Schwarzman Scholars is to be ambassadors when they go back to their own countries. We have 45% Americans, 20% from China, and 35% from the rest of the world.
Right, from all over the world. Do you consider yourself, Steve, a China whisperer?
No, I'm just like a hardworking guy, and I don't whisper much, and I try, sort of in some of my spare time, to make sure things work as well as they can. This is a luxury you have when you're older, and you know more people, and it's pretty effortless.
Right. Well, and you have, I mean, clearly you have quite a bit of influence, and we've seen, the relationship that you've developed with the president. You were on his strategic forum. Many people here consider you perhaps one of the, if not the, U.S. executive that has sort of the most understanding or maybe deepest relationship between, the U.S. and China. I'm curious, seeing what you're seeing now, which is, Trump coming out with more tariffs on China. He's surrounding himself, Steve, now more with people who see China more as a threat than a friend. What do you want to say to the president? I mean, have you talked with him recently about these moves?
Well, I'm not going to tell you and your vast audience, Betty, exactly.
Thank you for the compliment, Steve.
Right, exactly what I'm saying to anybody in particular. But
are you disappointed?
I think there's no doubt that there is a serious imbalance between the U.S. and China in terms of market access and tariff levels. and non-tariff barriers, investment limitations. And part of this happens in the natural course of things, that when you're a less developed country, then you have higher tariff walls. We did that in the United States in the 19th century, and it helped build the United States behind the protection of those restrictions. The issue now is that with China having such a large economy, even though per capita it's not as big as one would think, but in terms of aggregate size, it's the second biggest in the world, and it's growing at double the rate of any developed economy. That it's sort of time to make that change, to make that transition. And I think that the senior people in China well understand that, because it's just in their interest as well as other countries' interest, because if you don't normalize this, then populism develops in developed world, and then the people in those populations demand some kind of action.
And then it actually swings all the way back to the other side.
And then it starts spinning around, and everybody's a loser.
So so if I can infer then from what you're saying, Steve, I mean, are you saying that there could be some justification for these tariffs here to make it a more level playing field, or no?
Well, I didn't talk about tariffs.
Okay.
What I was saying is you need a normalization of access between countries. It's called fair trade. In other words, no one country should be keeping somebody else more or less out while they get to go in. It's not fair. So I think this is recognized.
So we need a more level playing field.
You need a level playing field, and the best products and services win. And I think that's all that's trying to be accomplished. And this will take some period of time, but responsible, intelligent people know that this is something that's going to have to be done, and it should be done in an orderly and thoughtful way, and I'm hopeful that will be the case.
Not to belabor this point, but if not tariffs, Steve, then what other levers could be pulled to level this playing field between the two countries?
There are lots of levers to get somebody's attention. My sense is that attention has been gotten, and we should be moving on to an execution phase, which would be good for everyone.
Are you still bullish on China?
Well, I think the Chinese are highly unusual. No one in history has ever grown at this rate since the normalization of China around 1980. It's gone from just about 2% of global GDP to something like 14. It's amazing.
Right.
And the growth rates are high. The people are adaptable. They don't mind working really hard for really long, and there's a will to win.
And seeing what we saw with the NPC so far with President Xi and the essentially unlimited term that he's now been given, the right move for China, in your view?
Well, that's up to the Chinese, not for outsiders.
Okay. Back here in the U.S., speaking about moves, we've certainly seen a lot of cabinet reshuffling over the last week or so, Steve, to put it mildly. Larry Kudlow now taking over from Gary Cohn's post. I know you know Larry. A lot of people on Wall Street know Larry. Is that a step in the right direction in your view?
Well, I've known Larry since 1972, which means we're both older than dirt.
It means you have a lot of experience and have seen a lot.
I see. Well, thank you for reinterpreting that. That was great, Betty. Larry's a very competent guy, and he's thoughtful. And as you know from watching him a bit on TV, he is not shy. Having Larry sit in a corner someplace and have people run over him because they find it amusing, I don't think that's the way this will play. And so I think Larry will play an important role. And as to Gary, he did play an important role.
Right.
And they got the tax bill done with Gary's help and Steve Mnuchin and other people in the administration.
This was going to be the administration where the CEOs were going to, come and show how the government was, could be run more efficiently. You had Rex Tillerson there. You've got Steve Mnuchin there still, and Gary Cohn. And little by little, Steve, these CEOs have dropped off. What does that say to you?
Well, it could say that there's some people who can more easily adapt to a government role, government pace, government levels of coordination. I think there's some issues of just simple personality fit. That when you assemble groups of strangers, a lot of these people that you were mentioning were not well known to the person who hired them. And so, it's sort of like a living first date where you get married
like a blind
maybe
date.
on the second date. Some of these were blind dates.
Right.
People who just literally, hadn't met each other. And when you start on an adventure like that, it's not easy. So I think the thing with Rex, was Rex is a really good person, and he's a distinguished guy, and he's smart and he's experienced in the world. The fit between the two individuals didn't seem to be there.
Yeah.
And where with Mike Pompeo, he briefs the president every day, and so this is not like a first date, and so these two guys get along. He knows his craft.
Right.
He's well liked, and he's experienced. So sometimes when you make changes, change is always shocking.
Yeah.
Because people get used to the world as it is. On the other hand, I think the two people who've come in are qualified and strong. So
you're confident.
So we'll go on sort of the next adventure, if you will.
That's a good way to put it. And when you look at, despite all this, quote unquote, the churn that you're seeing in the White House, or even just, the issues of the day in Washington, does it make you give any pause? Does it give you any pause in terms of you deploying your capital or where you're deploying your capital, Steve?
Well, not really. One of the things that's forgotten when we turn to this hubbub of what's going on in Washington is the basic economy is doing really well. Most of the indicia of consumer confidence, business confidence, they're at records. We just, what did we have? 800,000 people, came back into the workforce. Labor's getting tight.
Retail sales were a little shaky this morning, though, but...
Well, no set of measures work every time you measure them. But, we're going to have growth, I'm pretty sure, in the threes, which people said was impossible. And whenever you reduce regulation to the extent you believe that some of the regulations were really creating a lot of friction, and give people the confidence to go ahead because there's predictability. They're not going to be attacked for, sort of their just doing their jobs. That good things will happen in that kind of thing, let alone the policy changes that were introduced that will stimulate the economy and give it another leg.
Steve, Heidi's got a quick question for you.
Yeah, Steve, it's Haidi in Sydney. I just wanted to ask you to clarify this exit by China's sovereign wealth fund from its Blackstone holdings. What sort of implications does it have for your operations across Asia and in China? Does it kind of position China as more of a competitor? Can you give some context to this decision?
This is the CIC issue?
That's right.
What's that?
She said yes, this is CIC
yeah,
issue.
I mean, they bought stock in the firm in 2007, and they asked for a 4-year period, after which they wanted the ability to exit. It's now closer to 11 years. So, I think it was probably surprising to them and us that they kept their investment that long. They're terrific partners with us. We do a lot of other things with them with enormous success. So it's a very, and will continue to be, as far as everything I know, a very long-term productive relationship. In fact, interestingly, when we started with them, they only had 2 employees. So we helped them with their internal systems and infrastructure and all kinds of things. And we know virtually just about everybody there. We have somebody from our firm talking to theirs every day in some area. And it's been a very productive relationship on a mutual basis.